Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Thursday, October 13th, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we'll go to Alan, where he will sit down with James Bent, Vice President of Solutions Engineering at Virtuoso, to talk about Virtuoso's no-code testing automation. Alan will then speak to Laura Robinson, RSA Conference ESAF Program Director, to discuss the RSA Conference's ESAF report. Next, Alan will speak with Tim Hinrichs, co-founder and CTO at Styra, about RepoScan, the newest feature in the Styra Declarative Authorization Service. We are then airing episode 10 of Techstrong Women. In this episode, our hosts Jody Ashley, Tracy Reagan, and Rebecca August are joined by Zenobia Gottschalk, CEO of Forte Group, to explore the art of communication and how to break down technical topics into an engaging story. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on to tell us more about some of our upcoming webinars. Then we will be airing an episode of The Lab with Brendan O'Leary, where Brendan will tell us more about this month's GitLab release. Next up, we are in episode 2 of our series, Engineering the Change. This series will follow the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. We will then wrap up this broadcast with 2 episodes of View with Vizard. First, Mike will interview Court President Marcus Thomas, as Marcus explains when it comes to application testing, the time to shift down has arrived. Then, Mike will interview Torque CEO Offer Smadari, as Offer explains how no-code tools will drive security automation. That's what we have coming up for you in this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy. Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for October 13th. First up, Meta unveiled the flashy new MetaQuest Pro, a new high-end virtual reality headset at the recent conference. The headset is set at a price of $1,500, but has several new features, such as a high-resolution sensor, allowing people to see mixed virtual and augmented reality, as well as eye tracking. VR headsets in the past have been popular with gamers, but Meta seems to be positioning this headset more as a productivity device in their ongoing quest to invest in the metaverse. Next, the US Labor Department released a proposal earlier this week that could make it possible for gig workers to be reclassified as employees. If the proposed rule were to be adopted, it would raise costs for companies such as Uber and DoorDash that rely on contract work. The proposed rule would allow the classification of a worker to rely more holistically, including to what the rule refers as whether the work is integral to the business. The new rule sent stocks of these gig companies down and is just the most recent development in the fight between contract and employed work. In other news, Google has said it would work with Coinbase to start letting certain customers pay for cloud services with cryptocurrencies starting early next year. In the announcement, Coinbase also said they would be moving its data-related applications from AWS to Google Cloud. Google will start out by letting a handful of customers from Web3 world who would like to pay using cryptocurrency before expanding to more people. Blockchain technologies has become a bigger focus for Google recently, and it originally said it would be exploring adding support for digital payments back in May. Next up, a Dutch court has ruled that a worker who was fired after refusing to keep his webcam on while working has his rights breached. After the worker declined to share his screen and have his camera on, his company fired him for insubordination and refusal to do work. The court found that video surveillance of any kind would count as an intrusion into an employee's private life. This comes as we see more and more reports of workplace surveillance technology that has increased in use since the start of the pandemic. On Digital CXO, we have an article about how technology can fix the traditional car repair shop customer experience. The importance of good CX cannot be understated. But how do you improve industries that are typically filled with poor CX, such as car shop repair management? The answer lies in technology. And this article looks at 3 key areas that technology is helping this industry in. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at how GitLab has launched an open source cloud seed tool in collaboration with Google that makes it easier for DevOps teams to use Google Cloud Platform resources. GitLab has stated that the goal is to reduce friction by requiring developers to write code to consume these services using a set of lower-level APIs. To learn more about the new Cloud Seed tool, go to devops.com. Finally, on Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at how a group of pro-Russian hackers took several US airports offline earlier this week. Killnet, the hacker group behind the attack, used denial-of-service attacks to block access to 14 airport websites. The airport's operations were not affected, though, and the websites were brought back up quickly. This being said, the attacks could be seen as a warning sign. Security experts are warning organizations to be on high alert, as the group's attacks will likely continue. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV interview here. I'm happy to be joined by James Bent. James is with a company, it's a new company for our audience here, Virtuoso. James, I just want to make sure I got that right. It's Virtuoso, and the website is virtuoso.qa.
That is correct, yes, absolutely.
Good. All right, we're off to a heck of a start. James, why don't we start right there with Virtuoso QA?
Yeah,
what's the company do?
Yeah, thanks, Alan, and thanks for having us on Techstrong. So, Virtuoso, we have created a codeless test automation platform to be able to transform the way people test their browser-based applications for functional UI integration and end-to-end testing using our codeless technologies, which we've been taking out to the market now for a couple of years. But we've actually been around for about 4.5 years now in development and then going to market. Yeah.
Excellent. James, what about a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm VP of Solutions Engineering at Virtuoso. I've been on board in the journey for about 1.5 years now. So I joined when we were around 30 people. We're now about 110 people plus around the globe. Wow. And my role, I'm very lucky that I get to speak to pretty much most of our customers, a lot of our sort of key enterprise and partnerships. And I'm sort of the face that gets to be able to take the platform out to the market, sort of be able to speak and present, but also learn back from our market in terms of both, what's of interest, how it's adding value, and sort of working closely with many areas of the business, sort of the sales, the marketing, the product, the engineering, to be able to further advance this and be very central. So very lucky in that role. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar. I made the title up, Chief Strategy Officer at a company I had helped start in Colorado back in the earlier 2000s, and a very similar role though, because I had my hand in marketing and product and sales and dealing with customers and stuff, and I relished the role. James, I started DevOps.com about 2013, 2014, 8-9 years ago now. And it was funny, when I first started DevOps.com, there was this sort of cloud that was hanging over QA and testing.
Yeah.
What would DevOps? What did DevOps mean for testing? Is DevOps going to be the death knell for the QA person? Is DevOps just going to totally automate testing and testing's going to go away as we know it? Well, of course, none of that transpired. What in fact happened is that testing became much more sophisticated. Testing did in fact become continuous. In many cases, we do much more automated testing than we ever did before. But we also test better, I think, than we ever did before, right? Testing was always, prior to this, a kind of, was it steal from Paul to pay Peter, or steal from Peter to pay Paul, however the saying goes. Because there was never enough time and budget to do all the testing you wanted. So you had to make a choice. And oftentimes, quality lost out. Today, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying there's unlimited budgets or unlimited time. But with the advent of solutions like yours, right, we could test more, faster, quicker, even, dare I say, cheaper than we did years ago. Why don't you explain a little bit about how you guys work, how, Virtuoso helps with that?
Yeah, definitely. And you're sort of, what you've described, I mean, what we've got to consider is that not only are, platforms like ours in terms of automation making it, as you say, faster, easier, yes, in a lot of cases easier if we talk cost per test to be able to run, but what you've also got are pressures in terms of what's actually happening in the development sphere. We've gone from these quite sort of static applications, more sort of desktop native apps, where you're now working a lot of more browser-based and cloud technology, which becomes very dynamic. Things like literally trying to find a button to click on the screen and automate against becomes more difficult because they're more dynamic in the cloud environment. So with our sort of technology, where, Virtuoso to describe, we're using more of a natural language approach like RPA to enable anybody to literally write in plain English, click on button, for example, as opposed to dropping into code. But then combining that as well with AI and machine learning to be able to deal with, in a lot of cases, the changes that are occurring behind the scenes between releases, or maybe each time you load an application. So instead of a very typical issue in automation of automation breaking through dynamic changes, we're then combining the natural language approach with machine learning to automatically fix those, which firstly makes it more robust, but makes it very accessible and fast, which then we sort of find that actually what's happening is that you're moving away from sort of having to, QA, it frankly has always been almost not in the background, but it's never been, the hero of the development cycle or DevOps, but it needs to be there and it's not going away. Now what you're doing is saying, actually, there's always been a lot of pressure on QA, but now we can sort of start to say, actually, if you can go faster and if you can make it easier, you can start thinking about strategies to test sooner and better and wider. So certainly we are finding platforms such as ours are empowering that in the current stage. And then sort of we're really excited about where we take that to continue to evolve as, development evolves and as applications evolve, if that makes sense.
I agree. I think it does make sense 100%. It's funny, the interview I did before this one, James, was someone from the security AppSec side of the things. And it's a very similar story, is that in many ways where development leads, testing, security, operations follows, right? And so as our development cycles, methodologies, practices have changed, we've gotten more, all of these other disciplines have had to change along with it and evolve and adapt. And they have. I mean, that's the good news. They have. Yeah. And so, if you look at what you guys do, right? And I told someone 8-9 years ago that there's going to be this functionality that does that, they probably would have said, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Not going to be very good, I can tell you that. It won't work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in fact, here we are.
And an interesting point there is that because we officially go under the banner of codeless. And I think we like to be the first to say that, people will kind of be like, yeah, there's no such thing as codeless. You have to write code to have codeless, But there's also this idea that if it's codeless, it must also be a bit too simple and it can't really do the powerful things. Yet actually, when we're looking at, what you're able to do with codeless technology now, even though you're sort of getting abstracted away from the code, you can still do this very powerful level of testing, whether it's sort of testing business applications, taking into account environments or data. Bottom line is codeless technologies, such as ours and others as well, you can start having that power and flexibility, but with speed and accessibility. That means actually codeless doesn't have to be the poor cousin of automation, or it actually starts being a very powerful tool. But that said, it is a tool. What it's actually doing is saying, if I can speed you up and make you more efficient, in this case, in test automation, start thinking about how you test, including all those sort of areas you point out. It's not just the application, but testing. Security is a big thing now, sort of API security, that sort of thing. It's thinking about what you do with the testing rather than trying to get the tool to work, if you like.
Absolutely. It's an amazing thing. James, without asking you to go too deep in the weeds, I wanted to have you explain to our audience kind of the offering in terms of how is it packaged, how is it offered to users.
Yeah, so we have, like a lot of people, we have a SaaS application. So it's simple. Once you come on board, we have subscriptions, then you obviously get into the platform straight away. So there's none of the things around having to install or set up. But the nice thing as well, if we talk about natural language, which is a bit like RPA, RPA tools typically require you to spend a lot of time setting up keywords and objects before you can start using this. We don't need that because we've used, again, AI machine learning to say, as soon as you fire it up and I write a step like click on home, we find that home button in the application and immediately start creating working automation. We have something we call live authoring. So as I'm writing my steps or interacting with the screen, we're showing that it runs and passes. So you're building valid automation. You can do that with data, with integrations, with calling into databases to different environments. So it's sort of very robust. Being able to test any browser-based application, so a Salesforce, an SAP S/4HANA, or a front-end portal. But then also, because we're in the cloud, when you run the tests, we're running them on our cloud in parallel and at speed, so you can scale up your execution of your testing suites. And then we have full test reporting. So getting insights on every run, reading it in plain English with screenshots you're capturing automatically, so anybody can jump in and see if there's a failure. They've got the evidence, the screenshots, when it was run. And then we have debugging tools that you can run and start seeing from things like the dev tools if there are network errors or console issues, all in one place. So it's kind of a full sort of end-to-end solution for test automation, within the sphere of functional UI integration, end-to-end testing of browser-based applications. And look, we've, while we are, we're 110 people or so, we focus very much. What I was really impressed with when I came on, firstly, we spent 2 years building the platform to make it really a really good offering. But then we've done things like create amazingly good documentation, videos, and certification courses. So pretty much I could take anyone within reason, and within a day, I would have them automating, even if they had no experience. But then if you're an engineer, then you could come in and actually really power this to do some really sort of quite amazing things for testing your browser-based applications. And then one of the sort of the key points as well is, again, using what we call machine learning-driven self-healing. So when you run the test, we automatically say, if we can see that home button is still there, but behind the scene, we've got dynamic IDs or XPath changing, or it could be the label changes because of localization, we automatically heal that with a very high degree of accuracy. So you don't have to spend time fixing your flaky tests, if you like. So that's sort of a bit of a whirlwind, sort of just a very high level view of the platform. But look, it's yeah, exactly. But it's something, people can go to our website and have a look, and we have got a lot of videos on it. But genuinely, we built this to meet the market, and I enjoy being able to go out to all manner of different organizations, and the feedback we generally get is, do you know what? And you sort of said, if I said 5 years ago this exists, people would say, oh my goodness, that's it won't work. even a year ago, people are still saying, yeah, I'm not sure that will work. We show it to them, they get to try it, pilot it, and they go, this actually works. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. It's real. They work. And, I think just overcoming people's hesitancy with that is probably job one, right?
It is.
It's the biggest thing out there. So where do you go from here, James? I mean, just more of the same, building on this momentum, building on this base? Or do you see, is there a big breakthrough coming or something?
Yeah, I think there are two sort of sides. One is really sort of, building firstly our presence, but then also building, if you like, what we're really interested in is building the new norm for testing in terms of strategies, the new way to think about automated testing without the constraints of the technology. So we're sort of doing work in terms of almost universities to say, not sort of so much specific to us, but actually now you're freed up what you can do with testing. So sort of going out and saying really actually what you can do and strategically. But then the second side is actually where more we can take AI and machine learning. Actually what you can do by looking, let's say, into a lot of the logs that are collected when people use applications to be able to start autonomously generating sort of testing. Being able to start using AI and machine learning to say, actually, where should you prioritize your testing? Where are you most likely to get bugs or issues when you're developing? It's the start to really, augment what we're doing. All the time, though, being very clear that we don't believe that automation is going to replace people. As much as AI and machine learning is going to replace people, it's not going to. What it's going to do is empower them further. Nobody today can do enough in this space. So this actually says, if we can empower that and increase the levels you do this, that's really where we're going. This further empowerment, both in the technology, but also actually in how you can now test better that you're freed up through these types of tools, if that makes sense.
Makes sense perfectly. Hey, James, we're almost out of time. I know we mentioned the website in the beginning of the interview, but why don't you give people again the website where they can go to get more information?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's virtuoso.qa. And when you go there, as you'd expect, we have a 14-day free trial. We have links to our documentation. So if you just jump on virtuoso.qa, then either you can get going yourself or reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to have an informal discussion to see if it meets needs. More than happy to, of course.
Stupid question. Spell virtuoso for our audience.
So virtuoso.qa.
.qa. Love it. Hey, James, thanks for coming on Techstrong TV. Come back and keep us posted
about new goings on here. All right.
Okay. Thanks, Alan.
We're going to take a break here on Techstrong. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another segment on Techstrong TV. Excuse me. I'm really happy to introduce you to Laura Robinson, who is affiliated with, as you can see in her background, the RSA conference ESAF. And not to worry, we're going to explain what this ESAF is about and some news around them. But first, let me welcome Laura. Laura, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, it is. Laura, I guess we should start with maybe who is Laura Robinson and maybe a little of your background to share with our audience.
Sure. So I'm Laura Robinson. I'm the ESAF program director, and I've been the ESAF program director now for almost 18 years. So a long history with this group, and has been a fascinating ride, and I'm still very much enjoying it.
Absolutely. Outside of ESAF, though, Laura, a little bit about kind of your...
So I've actually had a consulting company for the last, again, almost 18 years. RSA Conference is one of my clients, and we do industry analysis as well as strategic communications. So my background is varied, mostly marketing, communications, in analysis, that sort of thing.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk about ESAF. Look, I've been going to RSA conference probably longer than I want to admit, 20 plus years.
Sure.
But I wasn't aware of ESAF. I'm not sure why I wasn't aware, if that was on purpose or not. But tell us, what's ESAF?
Yeah. So the Executive Security Action Forum, which is what the acronym stands for, is an association of chief information security officers or cybersecurity executives, basically, from the Fortune 1000 companies. And we have been meeting at RSA conference and also throughout the year. It's basically a trusted forum for information sharing, confidential information sharing. And the reason why you haven't heard about it is because it is just that. It's a closed door, invitation only, confidential information sharing forum. Now we actually have, as you mentioned earlier, we have taken on a more public profile just really very recently. We've decided to start branching out into research reports. And so our first one is just coming out now. So you'll hear more about us in the future.
Absolutely. That's great. We're going to jump into this report in a second. But I have to tell you, I recorded a piece last week. Of course, in the news was full of this fellow Joe Sullivan, the former CISO at Uber.
Yes.
Of course, was convicted of a couple of counts of withholding or lying, withholding information, not telling the truth.
Yeah.
And that was a shock to many in the industry, especially
Absolutely.
the CISOs, a bit of a wake-up call. But to me, it was one side of a coin. The other side of the coin being, I think it was the month before, Mudge Zacko over at Twitter, the Twitter whistleblower, who testified to Congress because, to me, it was sort of a Jerry Maguire moment, right? Where he just said, hey, they're not doing what needs to be done. There's a real problem here, right? So rather than waiting for the other shoe to drop and having to lie about it, he would try to be more proactive and kind of go public, right, with what he was seeing there. And a lot of people in the industry, it was a bit of a lightning rod as well in the industry. Where people were like, should he have not done that? What were his motivations? But to me, these represent kind of two extremes of what's a CISO to do. Does he do what I call the Nuremberg defense, which is what Sullivan said? Well, he was just following orders. The legal team told him not to say anything. Or do you go become a quote unquote whistleblower and go public? Or look, the fact of the matter is, I bet you most folks in our audience or in the community would walk with their feet. They just very quietly head to the exit and find another job, which may or may not be the right thing to do either. So I'm pleased to see of an organization, especially one that's been around 20 years, such as ESAF, which gives CISOs and security executives a closed door, if you will, confidential forum to explore what to do, what are the responsibilities, how to communicate to the board, and these kinds of things. So really, really happy to hear about this, and I'm really happy to hear that you guys are going public with it. It's good stuff.
Well, I think what you're pointing out is how important it is that companies have some sort of formal processes in place to manage and oversee cybersecurity risks and the management of the cybersecurity risk. I think in a lot of cases, the cases that you're pointing out, it's because companies haven't focused on it enough throughout the entire organization up to and including the executive leadership and the board.
Yeah.
But at some level, you make the big bucks, or I hope they do, as the chief information security officer, chief security officer. The responsibility lies with them, right? When to go to the board, what to go to the board with, what to do with when the board or others in the at senior level, management tells you, don't talk about this, do disclose that, right? These are decisions that can affect one's career far beyond the immediate instance.
Well,
It can affect one's freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. What security officers in our community really emphasize is that you have to be working with the other
peers,
executive management in your organization. You have to be working with other organizations. It's not just a one person show. It really isn't. And the responsibility for managing the risks within a company is everybody's responsibility. What the CISO is tasked with is helping people understand those risks and how to best manage them. They're not responsible themselves for managing those risks. They're responsible for making sure people understand how to manage them.
Excellent.
Let's jump into this first public report from the ESAF,
sure.
if we can. Well, it's your report. I'm going to let you start it off. What's the report about?
So this is the first report that the Executive Security Action Forum has done. It's a new endeavor for us. The community wanted to go beyond information sharing at sessions. As we mentioned earlier, typically we have confidential information sharing sessions throughout the year, and we will continue that. But we decided to also branch out into research so that we could do a deeper dive on topics. And also, we decided it was time to share the wealth of information that we have within this community with the larger security community. So this is one way that we're going to be doing that. So this first report is on reporting to the board. And why did we choose this topic? One is because it's a super important part of a CISO's job. And also it's hard to get information on how to do it effectively. Really, the best information on how to do it effectively is to speak to your peers about it, to hear how they're doing it. So that's why we tackled this particular topic. And also, as you pointed out, there's lots of stuff going on in the news. There's also increased regulation around reporting at the board level. So it's become a real focus in the board or with the board. And therefore, we wanted to make sure that we could help organizations do this well.
By all means. You know, Laura, I'm thinking back, it had to be 8 to 10 years ago. I was actually on a panel at RSA conference.
Okay.
And it was I don't remember the exact title, but the gist of it was, what metrics do you provide to the board versus the metrics you work with, right, with your security team? And it was almost, it was almost like you got to dumb down the metrics for the board because they're not going to get into it. And I disagreed with that. I don't think dumbing down was the right thing. I think...
Yeah, I agree. It's not...
translation.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you need to pick and choose the ones to share. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but the board, and this is something I've learned in 25 plus years in the security world, board level language dialogue, it's a different language than the language of the security professional.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
They're both, they could both be talking about risk, but at the board level, it's business risk.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Not.
It's a different dialogue, and I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of, especially younger CISOs, like CISOs, kind of learning. You're not talking to the guy who's manning the vulnerability reports or doing the pen testing or these kinds of things. You're talking to a business board who's interested in business metrics. Anyway, if you wouldn't mind, share a little bit about the report, findings, things maybe that our team would like to.
Yeah, for sure. So we actually do cover metrics. That's bang on what you've just described. It's a very big challenge. What metrics you share with the board, what will be meaningful to the board, because like you're describing, you can't give them all sorts of operational metrics. They, in a lot of ways, are not going to understand them because they'll just be too technical. and they won't be meaningful to them because you want to describe things that are happening that will impact the business. And so the report has a whole section on metrics, and it goes through how to choose meaningful metrics and how to formulate and present them in a way that will be meaningful. So, for example, if you're going to provide metrics to the board, you always have to show targets. You want to show trending. You want to consider what message you're trying to get across. What are you trying to tell them when you share a metric with them? Are you trying to help them understand a risk or help them understand some progress that's being made? So there's a lot to formulating and presenting metrics for the board. And in terms of what metrics are being shared in the report that we have done, we looked at we had materials actually contributed to our research team. So several CISOs actually gave us recent board updates, anonymous. They were all anonymous. And we were able to go through that and analyze them. And in the ones that we analyzed, we found that there were two common metrics. There were many, many metrics, and they were very different. There's a lot of variety, and it depends on the company and the board, etc. But the two that were very common were a maturity score of some kind. So based on an assessment like the NIST cybersecurity framework, and also the number of incidents. Obviously, the board wants to track how many incidents the company is having, and the CISO wants to report on that. That's a very important metric. So those are two of the common metrics.
Got it. Beyond metrics, though, well, I don't want to minimize it. Metrics are important,
yeah,
right?
No, that's right.
But
what else?
Metrics, yeah, what else is in the report?
Yeah. So the report lays out how challenging it is to share information on cybersecurity risk with the board. Like, where do you start? So it lays out, well, what are the board's objectives in understanding cybersecurity risk? What are some of the challenges in describing those risks to the board? You want to provide them with the right level of information. You want to give them assurances. You want to have a balance between this is what we're doing to manage the risks. Here are the areas that have gaps, and here's where we're making progress. So one of the quotes in the report talks about you don't always want to report a rose garden because that's going to seem kind of funny to the board that everything is always perfect. So you really have to balance it to help them understand, be as transparent as possible about what the gaps are and filling them. So the report gives some advice in those areas, I guess. It's not necessarily advice, but it shares how people are doing it so that you can get some ideas from that.
And look, I think that's the most important part of this whole thing is this isn't set to be the Bible per se, but it's supposed to be an
absolutely.
Insight.
Yes.
Right.
And it can't be.
Your peers.
Yeah, there really is no standard, and the report at the very beginning kind of has a section that says, how do you use this report? It's not intended as a set of best practices or a standard because there really can't be. It really depends on your board. It depends on their expectations. It depends on the regulatory environment, on your company. It depends on the CISO themselves and how they want to structure their report. So what it provides you with is just a bunch of great ideas on how to do it effectively.
Great.
Laura, we're running low on time, but for people who maybe want to take a look at the report, it's publicly available, and if so, where?
Yeah, just go to the RSA conference website. It will be available within the next few days.
Absolutely. I think people, by the time they're watching that...
Oh, okay, sorry. It's available now.
It'll probably be available, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be available if you go to the RSAC site now.
Yeah, I think there were... Yeah.
You know what? A long overdue thank you for 18 years of shepherding the ESAF. I'm glad to see it, coming out from behind the closed doors to help the community at large.
Yeah.
And kind of an expansion of this, of your mission.
Well, and after 20 years, we have a lot of really great information to share with the community. So we're excited about our next report. We're going to be tackling supply chain security. So that will be
That's
something
a
people are
topic
very
we spend
interested
a lot
in.
of time
Yeah.
on here. Yes.
It gets into the whole S-bombs and all that good stuff. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the RSAC call for speakers. I think it might have just closed by the time people see this, or it might still be open. But also the event itself this year in the U.S. is in April. I think it's the week of April 24th.
Yes.
People can go register now. I assume ESAF will
We're
be there.
already planning our meeting. Yeah, that's right.
We'll be doing our DevSecOps event there Monday of
nice.
this week as well. So
Great.
excited about that. Hey, Laura, thanks for coming on.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Do as I said. Yep. So go to the RSA site, RSA conference site, folks, and download this report. I think you don't have to be a CISO to get good value. And
No,
Good
there's lots of great
information
information in there
Yep.
about managing
Go
risk
check
and
it out.
how to report on it. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Laura. Be well.
All right,
We're gonna
bye-bye.
take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest.
This is Techstrong TV.
hey, everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV interview segment. I'm happy to be joined once again by one of our friends from Stryer, Tim Hendricks. Hey, Tim, welcome.
Hi, Alan. How you doing? Good to be here again.
Good to see you. Tim, I know you've been on a bunch, and of course we've had people from the company on, and we've covered OPA all through its CNCF kind of journeys as well. But not everyone out here is going to be familiar with Stryer and OPA and you. So as repetitive as it is, I'm going to ask you to start from the beginning and just kind of give us a quick crash course on all of those things, and then we'll jump to today's news.
For sure. Good, Alan. Yeah. So Tim Hendricks, I'm the CTO, one of the co-founders here at Styra. At Styra, we really focus on solving authorization problems for the enterprise and providing a unified solution to authorization. And so for those of the folks who don't think about this every day like I do, authorization is that problem of controlling the actions that we as people or that even software makes. So I always like it as an example to look at like one of our an online banking application. Whenever I sign into my bank, I once I sign in, I do a bunch of things. I look at my account balances and I think about withdrawing money and I look at tax forms. And so each of one of those actions, when I view an account balance or I try to withdraw money, or I look at a tax report, those are all actions that I take. And so the application underneath me that I'm interacting with has to decide which of those actions I am authorized to take and which ones I'm not. So yeah, obviously Styra then helps make it easy for developers to put that kind of authorization in place inside their applications.
That was a good illustration of that, Tim. I like it. Good work, man. And I mentioned OPA. And I feel like we kind of have to mention that explain that a little bit too. Of course, OPA stands for Open Source Policy Agent, which is it's a CNCF actually managed project, but Stryer was the originator of OPA, and it, of course still is closely involved with the management of the community and the project as well.
Fair?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, OPA, we created it. We still maintain it, along with all the other contributors in the CNCF. So yeah, it's doing great. The whole idea behind OPA, I'll give the quick little rundown. Was to provide, a unified way of expressing policies, of expressing authorization policies about who can do what or what services, what software can perform which actions that would be applicable to really any kind of software on the planet, right? We've already talked about applications and being able to control authorization there, but OPA was also designed, as well as the other offerings at Styra, to help you put authorization and policy controls in place for infrastructure as well. Like, when the developers are standing up and running that banking application we talked a little bit ago, you still have authorization problems that need to be solved there, right? Can these developers upgrade this application? Can they change these network settings? Can they change the storage and the encryption. Those are all authorization problems that need to be solved there too. And so OPA, as well as the Styra's products, were designed to help you put authorization in place, really for anything. And that was kind of its claim to fame.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Hey, we've done a great, we set the table beautifully here, Tim. It's time to eat now, right? So we've got some new news, new functionality, new product. I don't know if you call it a full-blown product or a feature of the existing product.
Yeah, it's really a feature of an existing product. So the existing product is called DAS, or the Declarative Authorization Service. It's really designed to be a unified way of solving these authorization policy problems end to end, typically for enterprises or companies. And this new functionality is really designed to allow you to apply policy to repositories, to like GitHub repositories. And the idea is you can actually scan, with this new functionality, scan the files in a GitHub repository and sort of apply policies and just sort of understand which of those files are going to be violating those policies.
Excellent. And news?
Well, yeah. Well, and one more thing I guess I should follow up on, which is, one of the reasons that repo scanning is valuable is just that what we see a lot of folks doing today is sort of taking infrastructure and sort of codifying it as code and checking the files that describe their infrastructure into GitHub. And so by scanning those files in GitHub, you're actually scanning your infrastructure sort of indirectly and finding all those, networking problems or those compute problems or those storage problems. And so really that's the end of the day, the value of this new repo scanning feature.
Well, Tim, it also goes, though, you mentioned GitHub, and whether it's GitHub or some other repo, in many ways, the role of the repo, or how we use repos and what we use repos for, has exploded, right? I think Git, which is, of course, the underlying power behind GitHub and GitLab and many of the repos out there today. What was it? Git is 15 years old, or maybe it's 16 years old now. If you would have went back 16 years ago to the creators or maintainers of that project and said, hey, look at all the great things we're going to be doing with repos now, they wouldn't have believed you, because, quite frankly, it was really about version control for software. It was a great solution for version control for software. But now, as you mentioned, we're putting hardware, infrastructure as code kind of things into repo, artifacts go in repo, open source kind of snippets go into repo. Everything is stored. Container and container payloads are in repos, right? It's become sort of a part and parcel of how we build technology today. Because so little of it is kind of custom built from scratch. It's more customized, built from something I downloaded from a repo, right? And whether that's a configuration or a real piece of software or infrastructure as code, it's still, I take it down from a repo and I do my little thing to it to make it my own. But it comes from repos. And so, repo scanning isn't just to see, it's that software I was working on, right? It's so much more today.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. And I think you hit a couple of really key points there, like the proliferation of the utility of these repositories has just been phenomenal. I think in part because it's such an easy way to share ideas, right? That's what's so popular about GitHub. We can, invite people to it. We can share them our code. Like you say, maybe it's software code, but it could also be infrastructure code. It could be really any files today, but it's just such a natural way for developers, especially to share information.
Look, I've seen examples, maybe not GitHub, maybe it was GitLab, of marketing teams using Git. Right? They repo all of their kind of creatives and ideas, and they kind of run their marketing distribution, if you will, via a repo. Right? And that's, I guess at some level one could call it code, but it's not the code we think of, certainly, right? And so it's stretched and pulled and twisted into all different things. Of course, in this case, though, we're talking more traditional computer code is what you guys are scanning.
Well, we really focus on infrastructure as code, honestly, right? So we're scanning your network configuration, your compute configuration, your storage configuration, whether it's Terraform or Kubernetes, that's kind of an implementation detail. But that's kind of the way, the kind of policies that we see being useful when in terms of scanning the repositories, because at the end of the day, the kind of vision that we have is that you ought to be able to write these policies, these rules, once. You ought to be able to say, you can't run as a root, and you can't. You have to use encrypted storage in production, and you need to only allow these kinds of network configuration. You ought to be able to write that once, and then you ought to be able to enforce it and use it in a bunch of different places. So you ought to be able to say, take those policies and run them on the Kubernetes cluster or on the Terraform installation routine. But you also ought to be able to use them to scan those files when they're checked into the GitHub repo. And you ought to be able to actually even apply those policies on the developer laptop, right? We want to shift left all that policy check as far as we can to make developers as productive as we possibly can.
Absolutely. But Tim, I feel like I got to push back a little bit. One of the things we've been seeing lately, someone wrote an article, I wrote an op-ed to it about, DevOps is dead, platform engineering is the future. And the gist, it was clickbait, the article between you and me, but I had to respond anyway. But the gist of it is that we've pushed too much onto the developers' plate. And they have too much on their plate. They already have a really hard job. And we need to push some of that off. And that's why SREs need to do more. This new platform engineer role and platform engineering needs to, take this off the plate of the developer. But, the caveat to that, a couple of interviews I did today is we're still a very developer-led industry. Where the developer goes, testing follows, security follows, access control follows, to a certain extent, operations follows, right? So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, well, let's take things away from the developer, but we're still going to do what the developer does. How do you see that play out here?
Well, I think this platform engineering role is often the folks that we talk to all the time, right? And I think what's interesting to me is that the way I think about the platform engineering role is that it's a bunch of folks who are typically writing software. They're often developers who are writing software to help other developers. And whereas like the more classic line of business developer, somebody who's writing software to help their customers, right? And so that platform engineer, the skill sets are very, very similar. But then you're right, what the platform engineer is typically responsible for, at least the ones that I'm talking to, are the things that are common across a bunch of developers or a bunch of developer teams even. And so you're right, like sometimes we see those platform engineers being the ones who are responsible for the infrastructure or infrastructure's code, for the Kubernetes, for the Terraform kinds of platforms. And then their customers, so to speak, are the developers within the organization. And so, what the right balance is there around who does what, I think kind of depends on the size of the organization, the size of the team, how specialized the infrastructure needs are for that application, for that development team, or how common they are, and therefore can and should be handled by that platform engineer.
Excellent. Hey, Tim, we only got a few minutes left. I want to focus in on this release. So if you're already a DAS customer, does this come with that offering?
It does, yep. Very easy. You'll actually run into it when you sort of onboard or sign up for the first time. It's 5 clicks or so, and you're up and you've got scanning results from your favorite GitHub repo, whether it's private or public. So yeah, very easy to get started.
Very cool. And it's available now?
Available now, yes, sir.
Very cool. And then I assume you're going to be at KubeCon later this. Well, I don't know if you personally will be, but the company will be at KubeCon later this month. People will be able to go there, touch it, see it, demo it, and talk to people about it.
Absolutely, yes. It's going to be great to be back in person. I actually get to go this year, so I'm looking forward to it for sure. And we've even got a policy summit, focused on OPA. So, just the day before.
I saw that.
That's probably, is that on Monday? Like they used to call it 0 day, but it's the Monday of KubeCon.
Yeah, the Monday at KubeCon. So, I definitely encourage folks to come out. Please sign up. But if you don't, come on out anyway, and it'll be good to see you.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be there broadcasting live. So stop by and say hello.
Will do.
All righty. Oh, did we give people the web? Tim, I don't think we gave people the website. Why don't you tell them where to go?
Yep. To find out more, go to styra.com, STYRA.com.
Styra.com. Excellent. All right, man. Hey, Tim, it's great seeing you. Hopefully I'll see you in Detroit later this month. Good luck with this repo scanner. It'd be interesting to see, how the adoption curve kind of ramps up with it. It's definitely something needed. And it was great seeing you. Take care.
Great seeing you too, Alan. Thanks so much.
All right. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong. We'll be right back.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Techstrong Women, where we feature amazing women doing amazing things in tech. Hi, I'm Jody Ashley, executive producer here at Techstrong, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Tracy Reagan and Rebecca August. But before we introduce today's guests, I want to give you a quick update on what's happening here at Techstrong. Coming up on October 4th, we have the Cloud Container Security Summit. And on November 16th, join us for DevOps Experience. If you're interested in submitting a speaker submission or attending either event, go to techstrongevents.com to sign up, and be sure to tune into Techstrong TV every day for great shows and interviews. Hey, Rebecca, what do you have on tap for this week?
So on tap for this week, I wanted to highlight a really amazing software engineer name. Our Instagram name is Maxine.js. She's a self-taught DevOps engineer, technical writer, and full stack mom is her description. So I love how she's a self-taught engineer, and she goes through Instagram teaching a lot of stuff that we cover at devops.com. What is the Internet of Things, DevOps versus DevSecOps. She is absolutely amazing, and she's kind of fun to watch. She makes learning really fun. I definitely suggest anybody who's looking into this industry should definitely check out her Instagram.
Full stack mom.
Nice, nice.
I like it. So what about you, Tracy? What do you have this week?
So as many of you know, I'm on the board of the OpenSSF. So I get things that come through about what's happening at the OpenSSF. And this came through. They have now started an end user working group. Super, super important. For those of you who don't know what the OpenSSF is, it's basically Open Source Security Foundation. And their focus is to really sort out how to make sure we don't have another log4j moment. And they're focused heavily around SBOMs and CVEs and making SBOMs available to everyone. One of their problems, though, to be quite honest, is they don't have enough end users providing feedback in terms of what problems that the end users are having with adoption of SBOMs. So we may generate one and it sits on a file system somewhere. So woohoo, right? Did a lot of good to take that time to generate it. So we're looking at use cases and understanding from a end user perspective, what stops them, what are the barriers, how can we help them? And having this end user working group will be super essential. So if this is an area that you're interested in, or even if you're a DevOps person, because when we start talking about security, it's really part of the DevOps pipeline. We've talked about DevSecOps for a long time, but what does that really mean? It means bringing the security pieces into the development pipeline, which also means we're shifting security farther left. So how do we do that? We do that by getting feedback from end users. So there's so many ways to get involved in open source communities. One of the easiest ways, though, is to be part of a working group where you're providing input. It means you're not coding. You really are just providing input to say, these are the problems that we're struggling with. These are the kinds of use cases we'd like to see. And that's what that end user working group is all about. So don't hesitate. Jump in. Don't tip your toe in the water and see if it's too hot or cold. Jump in full force and help us out with sorting out these security issues. And if you're in the DevOps space, this is a really good place to start. So that's what I have today to encourage everybody who has never been in an open source or worked on an OS working group. This would be a good one for you. And you can find out more about it at the OpenSSF website.
That's amazing. I think we all forget that we can't be a silo, right? We need input. We need to just, we don't have to fix all the world's problems, but we need to have a conversation and bring a lot of people into it, find out all the things that are going on. So that's really cool. Thank you, Tracy. That's awesome. I would like to introduce you to our guest today. We're very excited to have her. Zenobia Gottschalk, would you like to tell us all a little bit about you?
Hello. Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me on. This is such a great group and community. So as Jody mentioned, my name is Zenobia Gottschalk. I run communications for a company called Swirlds Labs on the blockchain side, distributed ledger side. I also am the vice chair of the Forte Group, which is a group of senior women in cybersecurity who in the midst of the pandemic found a way to develop some community and to share ideas and to come together to enable all of us, as much as we were spread out across the country and across the world, to still continue to have that level of community and to share ideas and help each other in our career paths. So my background, I graduated from Stanford, worked out in Silicon Valley for a number of years, worked in technology companies, did a very short stint on the sell side in investment banking as an analyst covering internet security and infrastructure. It was a great learning ground to really jump in and understand the entire security ecosystem, but it was still investment banking, which is not an area I wanted to be in. So I left that fairly quickly, went back to doing PR, IR, and what we call full stack marketing for technology companies. And most of where I spend my time is with security and blockchain companies. And so, now today also thinking about that intersection of those two, always something new to learn, and always, and just glad to be here.
And you didn't mention it, but you're also aren't you a TEDx speaker?
Yes. Yeah. So I I have spoken at TEDx. Yep. Yep, absolutely. On blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I think one of if anybody gets that opportunity, I would highly recommend that they take it. It is a lot of work, but it's also, they have a great process, right? They put you through it. They really make you think about your talk. They help prepare you. So if anybody ever gets that opportunity, I would encourage them to do it.
I've thought about it, but I've always been like, do I have the time? Do I have the time?
Yeah. And I don't know, I know they run them differently, but I think for me, it was sort of a 9-month prep, not that it was the full 9 months, but they walk you through, right? They have a certain bar in terms of what they want to see and how they want you to deliver that. But they also provide some great support in terms of speaker training. We work with people who are practicing speeches all the time. And I always say that you can never practice enough, right? Once you feel like you've practiced so much that you're sick of hearing yourself, that's probably about the time where you're ready to get on stage.
Yeah, what happened to Toastmasters, right? That was people who attend to this day. It's an old, organization, but people who do attend Toastmasters and practice, they are far more polished. So I think it's awesome that TEDx does that for you.
I didn't even know Toastmasters was still around.
It's still around.
My dad did Toastmasters, and he would have been 100 this year. So yeah, that was a long time ago. I remember him doing that, but it just isn't something you hear about that often. It's great that they take that time though to give you a whole new skill set, not just, hey, jump up here and do a talk, but
that's right. Really... Yeah, they want these ideas to be successfully communicated, right? So you can have a great idea, and if you're not able to share it with the world, then that's a sort of a singular great idea, right? But the ability to then share it and make that vision something that other people buy into, I think is really powerful.
And it's powerful in everything we do in software in general. I know as a person who is, I've lived off of small companies since I was 27. I started doing consulting when I was 27 and then formed my first company in 95. Communication is essential. And communicating technical topics can be extremely difficult. Really bringing, you're in the blockchain space. Why don't you tell us about how are you bringing that blockchain story, especially security around blockchain? How do you bring that story forward? What is your thought process in pulling that information together?
Sure. So I think, I always think about, well, you have to go deep before you can then pull back and have that, 10,000 foot view. But at the end of the day, there's a great model. This gentleman named Simon Sinek, if any of you are familiar with him, which is the start with why, right? People won't care about what you do until they care about why you do it. And so I think when you're trying to communicate these technical topics, you do need to spend time with the folks who are building, who are creating it, and you need to hear everything that they are saying about what they are doing and their beliefs on why it's so important. And then the challenge is taking that and saying, great, now you all probably know way too much. And for the person who is just getting a taste of this, I need to give them only the highest level of why. And then I can dive in, right? Then, I think that people are much more, they want to control their journey of how they discover things much more on their own, right? The days of Gartner tells me what to buy and I go buy it are long gone, right? I can now jump into Reddit. I can now jump into Discord. I can now have all those conversations when I want to at a very technical level, but I first need to be hooked. So one of the things that I tell people, when they're going through this process is think about, at the end of the day, everybody loves stories, right? We love them from the time that we're children. We love the hero's journey. We love, conflict, but we also just like to be told stories and we like to be entertained. And if you were able to do that and put it in, in the perspective of why do I care, right? Why should I care? How does this affect me? That's going to be a lot different. So if I tell you, well, a blockchain is an immutable ledger and you can, control your own data and it is distributed, a distributed multi-master, database, like most people are going to go, well, that's great, but I don't care. If I tell you, yes, you're going to, the person who has 7,000 other things coming at them, right? They just don't have time to do that. But if you say, well, gosh, are there any instances where you wish you could control your data or you wish that you had accountability across your supply chain, right? You talked about sort of the software bill of materials, right? So we think about, for example, a physical supply chain, right? When the COVID vaccine was coming out, the big story was that supply chain has to be cold at every point in its journey. And that vaccine has to be cold in every point in its journey before it gets in your arm. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Okay, well, maybe you can apply distributed trust to that process. Can I have the manufacturer verify that it was cold throughout the creation of that vaccine? Can I have the distributors verify that their warehouses were cold at every point where it was stored? Can I have the trucks verify that those were cold at every point where it was transported? And can I have the hospital verify that the entire time it's been in their possession, that it was actually still cold before it got into my arm? And so those are all things where the hospital may say, well, great, but I don't want, the distributor owning that, or I don't want the manufacturer owning that, but I need that distributed trust. So we talk a lot about the end user stories and the why, to say, why is distributed trust really important? And where can you think about applications in your life where you would like to have that kind of distributed trust, where you don't necessarily trust one person or party to hold all of that data?
And I think you just gave us the reason why you probably did an excellent TEDx presentation, because you just taught us what I asked you. That was a great analogy for tracking software. I think that we hear oftentimes that it's too complex. It's, creating a bill of material or showing the ingredients of software is far too complex. But what you just described is super complex and has a impact, a death, or a life or death impact on people. So what is it, do you think, that why are we not, why is it, it's 2022, we're headed to 2023, just around the corner, and we're just starting to talk about the ingredients of software and making sure that it's stored in a cold warehouse? What is it? Why haven't we talked about this before? I've been talking about it since 95 when we first created our first build audit report. But what is it now, other than the Biden administration? Why is this communication happening now? What's happening?
Yeah, I do think that there has been a push for a long time, the concept of shift left, right? Like build security into your software earlier on in the process. But I do think the definition of left has also had to shift, because it used to be, I'm going to build my software and I'm going to build every single piece of it, right? Now you've had the advent of low code platforms. Now you have development teams globally. Now you have software that is built more modularly. And that's great, because that shows an evolution of our industry, right? That shows a maturation of our industry. Let's not recreate the wheel every time we're trying to create a piece of software. But with that maturation, you also then insert that uncertainty, because you don't control the whole process. And you do have to depend on a number of different vendors where you may not necessarily know everything that goes on in their environment. So I think, it is, it's a good problem to have, because it shows that we as an industry have matured to the point where we are not, we are not sewing our own clothes. We are not, growing our own food. We have created this beautiful global supply chain, but now we have to do all the other things that other global supply chains do.
Which is accountability.
Right.
Well, and I think along what you were saying is we have all those supply chains, but I think a couple things that COVID has taught us, is a lot of people went back to trying to grow their own food, right, over the last 2 years. And then they realized, geez, there was a lot more to this, because I tried gardening and I'm on my 3rd year of kind of getting
same. Tomatoes, great.
It's just not working. And it has given me a complete new appreciation of this whole process that goes into me getting food. And I think the same thing with having discussions, right? Zoom, although we're all really sick of it, has also created conversations that we can jump on in a way that I don't think we were doing. We all kind of thought we got to go somewhere and see someone in person and go to a meeting and get everybody in a conference room. And if we can't do that, it's not going to happen. And now it's like, what's our excuse, right? Just pull up a Zoom call and get 10 people on it and have a conversation. So I'm a cup half full kind of person. I always have to go through times that are rough. And I think a lot of it is my faith that teaches me what positive is coming out. And I always hear in these conversations, there's positive things that have been generated. People appreciate things a lot more, I think, after maybe not being able to get everything we wanted, right? as
Right.
easily as going to the grocery store. I'm like, how can they not have watermelon? Stuff like that. I think this is the same thing in the sense that we're all appreciating all these processes that go into all the things that we appreciate. And I think security is definitely, with all the Zoom calling and home security, people on their own PCs and not having networks that people are controlling internally. I think it's created a whole new world of awareness that a lot of us didn't have before.
I'd agree with that.
And those of us who had the awareness were going, boy, there is a 800-pound gorilla in the room and nobody's mentioning it. Nobody's mentioning it.
Nobody's thinking about it. I think that's what's happening. Is it's a conversation that, as you guys mentioned, is that it's happening now, and it's one of those conversations that needs to happen very often, and needs to start in schools as young as elementary school students, to college students, because when you think about it, they're going from Starbucks to home and jumping on different networks and coming home. And if you're working for a tech company and you don't know what information is being shared, your child has just brought something home, it's only a disaster. It's downhill from there.
Yes, there's viruses everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Now, Zenobia, I watched your TEDx and you did an absolute amazing job. Let me ask you, with your amazing experience and your background, what has been the greatest challenge when communicating some of these complex technologies to the masses? What is the greatest challenge that you've experienced overall?
Yeah, so I think, there is, as information has been more accessible and as people are willing to and just have all of this at their fingertips, there is also the expectation, I think, that technology just works, right? So you can no longer really kind of open up your computers and kind of figure out what's in there, right? Like the next generation's like, yep, I have an iPad and it just works. So I think the perspective of, for those of us who have been around a while, is these things take time to mature, right? They take time to progress. They take time for that adoption to happen. The sort of hype cycle of when technologies really get to be exciting, and then when they get adopted, is very different. And so I think making sure that people understand we're still so early in some of these things, right? That don't get discouraged because there are issues, because there are security issues, because there are, downtime issues. If you try to go back and remember the days before, fiber was ubiquitous, right? The internet, there were a ton of critics because people said, this thing is never going to work. Like, why would I use this? It's slow, it's horrible, it doesn't do anything I need. And now you can't imagine. I mean, I look at articles that basically say, like, the internet is dead, so long, that was a great experiment, right? And I think
wow.
I think being able to apply that same level of perspective to new technologies as they're coming out, right? So when you're in it day to day, it's almost like, with your children, right? The days are long, but the years are short. And so making sure people understand, look, just because there is an issue with this aspect of the technology today, or just because it doesn't work sort of how you have projected that it should work today, doesn't mean that vision won't come to fruition. But you have to have that patience to understand all of these things have to be, all of that innovation has to build on itself, right? If we gave up on mobile devices the first time we did it, I mean, you guys remember the Palm Pilot, the Zune, all of those, yeah, there was sort of a more of a tolerance and patience for technologies maturing when I think we didn't have, the attention span of tiny rodents, right? Today you have generations that say, great, like my interest in entertainment is 30-second clips. I'm not going to watch a 30-minute sitcom. So for them, it's great to have that level of impatience in some ways because it does drive the technology forward. But I think it's also important to be able to communicate and convey that these things are working. They may not be working as well as we'd like in utopia, but they will get there.
So just to play devil's advocate, I had a conversation with one of our youths, one of our interns, and we were talking about, how we communicate our stuff that we have on Techstrong. How do we get it out to the masses? And he was convinced that everybody used Snapchat, and that in 5 years, Snapchat was going to be the thing. And he was saying that today. And I was just chuckling because I'm like, at what point do we realize some of those things? How long do we go before we realize we have to let go and move on? I mean, there's a whole nother, because to me, Snapchat, really, I have 20 somethings and they don't use Snapchat. So the thought for me of 5 years down the road, this being the latest, greatest all of a sudden, and we look at where we are. He's in a generation that they do use it. That's how they communicate. So at what point do we realize, okay, we've pounded our head against the wall long enough, maybe we should try something else?
And that's part of the challenges of technology, is the speed at which we're changing.
Exactly.
I used to tell people in the build space and in the DevOps space, we used to have the luxury of time to sort out our pipeline and our brittle scripts, because it wasn't going to be for 2 weeks before this was rolling out. But now we're rolling out things in a microservices world. The idea is to roll them out all day long, right? So that time is being compressed. While we used to have that luxury of time, we don't have that anymore. And when we're rolling out changes on a regular basis, new technology is hitting the internet, hitting clusters, hitting the desktops and the phones of end users all the time. So this pace has really changed a lot about how we interact with the world. And now we as customers demand things to be fixed immediately. We don't want to wait for anything.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. To mimic that, I know Zenobia hit a point on that, kind of like saying that, we just can't wait anymore. When we think about it, I know when I grew up, we still had the telephones that were in the walls. Well, by the time by the time I came around, by the time my son came around, he was automatically just FaceTiming me, it was FaceTime. So I remember when I was in high school, I would have to call, leave a message, wait for somebody to call me back. There's no such thing anymore. You FaceTime somebody, they answer, or instant message. So I think there's no patience anywhere across the board.
I'm so guilty. I'll have 50 or 60 messages when I go to check my phone. It's like, why didn't you just text me?
I don't even leave messages. My kids know that if I call, and most of my friends too, if I call them and they don't answer, I just hang up. They see that I have a missed call and they call me back.
Exactly.
Because who wants to listen to a message?
Not me.
Say, hey, I'm sorry I missed you. Can you call me back?
Right.
It's like, missed call. I called you. Give me a call.
Well, and I think, Jody, you brought up a good point about I think we try to also think about the message versus the medium. And so, I think it becomes even more important to make sure that message is crisp and clear and everybody understands it. And then to say, okay, but my area of expertise is not Snapchat. It's not, some of these other platforms. So maybe I need to then build my team so that we have all those different experts on there. But at the end of the day, they are all delivering that same core message across those platforms where it's consistent.
That makes
sense.
Yeah, definitely.
So Zenobia, just to shift a little bit, I understand you were also involved with a group called Forte Group. I think a person like myself needs to learn more about what that is. Could you kind of give us a rundown of what you're working on?
Absolutely. So, yes. So going back to the start of the pandemic, there are, as you all know, the percentage and the number of women in cybersecurity is small but mighty. And I think we got used to seeing each other at conferences. We got used to getting together in person. We got used to sort of, giving each other the nods of, oh yes, it's some of the same folks that we've known for a long time, who we've watched and supported each other growing up in the industry. And when the pandemic came around, Dee Dee Dayton and Chengxi Wang, started having conversations around, well, how do we keep that sense of community, and how do we keep that sense of support among this group when we're no longer able to be together? And so we started meeting informally in 2020. And, it was really a sort of a Slack channel of, women who were fairly senior in their careers in cybersecurity and in privacy. And then it started being, okay, well, let's not just sort of share tips and tricks, but maybe we should, have some education that comes here too. So we brought in speakers who talked about everything from negotiating. We had a Harvard professor come in and talk about, negotiations. We had folks who, now this is a group of fairly senior women. So, we had some of the women present and have a discussion on, okay, how should you negotiate equity comp, right? What are the things that you need to be thinking about? We've had women come in and talk about, if you're thinking about angel investing, what should you be looking for? And then also much more technical topics. So, SBOM being one of them, managing, ransomware risks and cryptocurrency risks being one of them, all topics that are really important in our careers, that also, potentially have some sensitivity. And so we're having a trusted group of other women where you can say, great, this is Chatham House rules, and, nothing gets shared, with attribution beyond this group, has just, I think, been a really valuable resource. But of course, if you are, you all know some of these women, none of them are content to sit on their laurels and say, great, that's wonderful. And we've done this and now, solved. So last year we started talking about, okay, well, how can we, and we actually had some inquiries from people who said, great, this seems like a great group. I'd love to participate in terms of making donations, or I'd love to participate in terms of somehow otherwise sponsoring the group. Internally, we were also talking about, how do we scale, how can we potentially put in place some more infrastructure? So it has been and continues to be all volunteer, but how do we, get in place some of those resources? And then how do we think about potentially supporting that next generation of leaders who, it is incumbent upon us to build that pipeline. A lot of women are multi-time CISOs. A lot of women are in their first role as a CISO. A lot of women are sort of at that one layer down where it's clear that they will be that next generation of security leaders. And so how do we provide the kinds of programming and resources that really strengthen that group and help identify where are the gaps, both in knowledge as well as in networks and support, to make sure that that group is successful, and to make sure that we are also, paying it forward and helping that next generation of potential leaders in our space.
Interesting. Very interesting. So are there, I don't know that particular market that well. Is there are women underserved in those higher level security positions?
So I think, I haven't looked at the data, but I think if you look at, the overall cybersecurity industry, it's I think something like 15%. It's still quite small. And then as you get up the ranks, I think it speaks volumes that we all knew a lot of the senior level women, right? So we started, and it has grown through, hey, I know this person, and I recommend that she be invited to join. But it is a very small group. I think in some ways, it's probably, I don't know how it compares to the overall IT female leaders in IT. But it's definitely a small group.
I would say at the Open SSF, in terms of who's on the board, we're probably like 5% women, if that. I'd have to do the math, but let's just give it, the benefit of the doubt, 5%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I spend my time hunting up folks to be on panels and participate on Techstrong. And one of our shows is called CISO Talk. So we're always looking for C-level. And as someone who does that a lot, I'm just going to put it out there. I could have a panel every day of 5 white dudes, but we don't do that at Techstrong. If the panel isn't diverse, we don't record. That's just the standard that our CEO, and I'm very proud of the fact that the CTO, who's my husband, has done that in his whole career. He's always mentored women and helped them to, be able to find a way to get up those ranks, because it's very important to him and he sees their value. It's one of the reasons I love him so much. Tracy and Rebecca both know him, and they know that he's a really good guy that way. But I struggle because, like you said, I end up kind of with the same pool of folks, whether it's women or whether it's women of color or whether it's diversity in general, especially at the C-level. And it's super frustrating to watch that. So when I see groups like yours, I get so excited because I see this whole sea of people that I wasn't aware of, that I can reach out to and be like, hey, we're doing this, we're having an event, we're doing a panel, I have a webinar that I need you on, and we need to get to the point where we're just like finding people, and it's not so hard that we have to specifically look for color and sex and gender identity and all those things that are so important. But yeah,
Right.
Definitely those numbers are low.
Yeah. And we absolutely have, folks. So Jody, we can definitely share with you some incredible women to
I
feature
was
there.
planning on it.
and we're really not.
You bring up a good point about allies though too, right? I mean, we certainly see that there are some incredible allies in the space. So, it is, I would be remiss to not note, the men who get asked to join a panel and say, great, but I'm only going to do it if there is diversity on this panel.
Yeah. I'm
That's
getting
so
more and more of that every day. People literally saying, who's on here? I want to know that this is diverse. Yeah, for
And
sure.
as soon as we get in, we need to get investors thinking that way too. I just want to point out that women only get about, I think, around 2% of the VC funding, 2%. I used to go out and look for funding. And then one day I said to myself, what makes me think I am at the 2% of women who have awesome ideas? And I just decided not to pursue it anymore because it was going to be a waste of my time.
I didn't know.
Which is, a sad statement because of, quite honestly, I think if I was had a different profile, I would have been looked at more closely. But
Right.
It's 2%. And when you only have 2% of women being lifted up at a co-founder or C-level, you're not going to have a whole lot of diversity come along the way. That is just the case. When you don't have upper management and co-founders and C-level folks who are diverse, you're just not going to have a diverse population at that company.
Yeah. And I think, that's one of the things that we, that's part of, I think, the beauty of this group too, is that there are, there are women who are in VC, there are women who have been angel investors or LPs. And so it's not just about getting access to them, but it's also about saying, okay, well, how can we potentially help you think about how other VCs are, thinking about things in their portfolio? What are the kinds of things that you need to have ready if you really do want to go and pitch all these other folks? And how can you, use these networks of other women who have, who have been able to get there to help you?
This is a true story. I was pitching to, I won't say who it was, a VC out of the Silicon Valley. And he listened to my about 5 minutes of my pitch. And he said, I just want to stop you right there. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And he goes, I could never invest in your company. And I was like, great. Tell me why, is my zipper down? Somebody tell me if I have toilet paper stuck to my shoe, right?
Lipstick on my teeth.
Exactly. And he said, well, what would happen if your kid got sick?
Oh.
And you know what my response was?
What?
Cool. You think I'm in childbearing years.
Why, thank you.
I did. I said, thank you so much for thinking that. And I said, but how is that different from a man?
Right.
And he said, because it's the women who always stay home with the sick kids, and I don't want to have to deal with that. What would I do? He was honest. And I thanked him for his honesty.
How recent was this?
Last year.
No.
Wow,
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Yeah, last year.
Oh boy. I have to behave myself now.
So we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. So I'm glad that the Forte Group is addressing that problem because it matters. Every little bite matters, right?
Okay, I have to ask one more question. Age group of this human. What age group was this person in?
It's hard for me to tell age, but I'm guessing he was somewhere
thought you
between.
could have babies still.
Yeah, he thought I could have babies, but he probably was younger than me. I look much younger than I am. I'm guessing he was between 40 and 50.
Wow.
I would have expected 10 plus for that.
No.
The fact that attitude is in that age group just makes me.
But he was honest.
I know.
How many other people have I pitched to that didn't tell me that?
Right. He saved you the other 50 minutes of your time.
He did. And I thanked him for it. I did. I thanked him. But like I say, I don't know how many other pitches I had done where they were thinking that and they didn't tell me.
We need to use the format of like The Voice or that show where they wear weird costumes when they sing and nobody knows who they are.
Right.
Because I'm serious. If you put people in a room and you didn't know anything and you just listened to what they had to say, we would not be having this conversation all the time.
Yeah.
It's totally this whole, I'm going to get all wound up. This is bad. I have really, my whole family, my children are very active politically. They're into stuff. So we get a lot of good conversations going on. So I have to behave myself or I'm going to get myself in trouble.
But I think there's been that application, right? Like in the NFL, there's the Rooney Rule, right? In terms of who you have to interview before you appoint someone in a job. I think there's tons of examples where, being able to kind of, unfortunately mask the real identity of someone puts them on a more level playing field. And so, as we think about, I'm not sure that the, Mark Zuckerberg's vision of the metaverse where, look, you can now have a virtual meeting in the metaverse. I was like, wow, that seems like the most painful thing to do. Why would you want the metaverse for that? But if you could think about, potentially your identity in the metaverse, right? And if you had a pitch competition where everybody looked the same and everybody, when they were presenting had the same, avatar, the same environment. And then you're really allowed to be judged on the merit of your ideas. Maybe that's a more interesting.
I love that. The avatar, everybody's avatar is the same.
Yeah, I was talking to a CEO about this for a fairly large company about how they do this, how they do hiring to try to encourage more women. And the person responded by saying, when we distribute resumes, we take the name off. And my point back was that doesn't work. Because we have to now start saying, give me binders full of women and binders full of diverse people so we can hire from that. Discrimination got us into this mess. Discrimination will get us out of the mess. So the culture has to start shifting to say, it's okay to say, I'm going to look at these resumes from this pile of diversity. And we have another pile here that has really skilled people, but we need to look through this specifically. So, discrimination can go both ways, right? Let's discriminate to bring some diversity into corporate America. And just taking a name off a resume just isn't going to work. because there's so many more men than women in that particular, in our industry, it's ridiculous how many more men there are than women.
Well, and I think you can read a resume without a name and probably tell a lot about the person, because women speak in a different tone than men a lot of times, right? The way we describe ourselves, the way we describe what we do, it's very different. So I think if you gave me a stack of 10 nameless resumes, I think I could probably identify at least 50% of them by whether they were male or female, maybe higher.
Especially of what they're interested in, right?
Exactly.
They have their interests.
It's too generic. Well, I hate to tell you guys this, but we only have a few more minutes left. Zenobia, tell us what the Forte groups got going on coming up that people can look for or jump in and check out.
Sure. So yeah, we have now finalized the process. We are officially a nonprofit. So, if anybody would like to contribute or your companies would like to support it, we would love that. You can visit the Forte Group, forte-group.com website. We will also be thinking about ways that we can expand that membership, as I talked about, and those opportunities so that we are engaging not just, the women who have already sort of fought their way to the senior level, but how do we make that easier for that next generation? I think there is not for many groups, there's the belief of, well, I suffered, so, you should suffer too, right? We're not the Navy SEALs. We're not going through camp like, We've said, okay, great, we've suffered, so let's make it better for those who come after us, and let's figure out how we utilize those same kinds of networking opportunities that have benefited the majority in the past. Like I say, small but mighty. Let's figure out how we use those to our advantage going forward. And how do we think about, how do we cultivate that and make sure that, the people who are, Jody, to your point, not even reviewing the resumes, but also writing the job descriptions are writing them with diversity in mind. And they are writing them so that they, value those kinds of things. We went to Israel a few years ago, and our tour guide said, so in Israel, all the checkpoints are manned. They're manned by the military, right? And you drive through and you roll down the window and you answer a few questions to typically the woman holding the, AK-14 or whatever it is at the checkpoint. And he said, do you notice, what do you notice? And essentially most of the people at the checkpoints were women. And he said, why do you think that is? And of course, my boys were looking at me like, no idea. And I said, is it because women pay more attention to detail? And he said, absolutely.
That's amazing.
So when you think about cybersecurity, right, those kinds of things that there's a lot of benefit to having that diversity, not only of opinions, but also experiences and of the kinds of things that you're thinking about, because you can bet that the opponent on the other side is not going to just limit their way of thinking to sort of a very traditional mainstream way of thinking. That's not how they got to be hackers and how they got to be on that side. So, we need to use that diversity of thought and opinion and experience to our benefit, because we are not winning the war at this point. So we've got to get better.
Wow, what a great way to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being with us. This was a really great conversation.
It was fascinating meeting and speaking with you, Zenobia. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great. And
we're going to keep in touch, and we're going to watch what you guys are doing. I'm sure you're going to do some great stuff. That's super exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of Tech Strong Women. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, so please tune in. And every day, tune into Techstrong.tv. We have lots of great stuff out there for you guys to watch. All right. We'll see you later.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Cody J. Brown here with some programs happening next week at Techstrong Learning. So Monday is kicking off at 1 p.m. Eastern on Container Journal with our Kubernetes on the Edge Roundtable. Mike Vizard joins panelists from Fairwinds and High Velocity to look at edge computing and the security and management concerns that accompany. Following at 3 p.m. Eastern, Akamai and Techstrong Research conducted a study to find what cloud users are beginning to expect from cloud providers. Join us for the move to the distributed cloud, what DevOps expects from public cloud providers. And first up on Tuesday morning, October 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern, AWS and Sumo Logic are back with another roundtable on next level DevOps, overcoming the silos. Our panel will take a DevSecOps approach on baking security into your software delivery lifecycle and how analytics and automation can secure you against threats. So that is all I've got for you today, but if you can't wait until next week for more programs, go to devops.com/webinars and check out our on-demand section for all of our content that we have waiting for you. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to The Lab, a monthly show where we look at the latest and greatest developments in software development, DevOps, and the cloud. I'm your host, Brendan O'Leary, coming to you today from a very wet Annapolis, Maryland. It's been raining, I think, for the past 3 or 4 days. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm a staff developer evangelist at GitLab, which means I get to talk to amazing folks throughout the software engineering space about what it really means to get code shipped into production. And today we've got just a really great episode for you. The GitLab 15.4 release is out, and it brings a lot of new cutting-edge DevOps capabilities to GitLab and to the GitLab One DevOps platform. And so we've got exciting product updates that's going to help your developers and your teams collaborate and deliver software more securely. And I think that's what we'll get started with. We'll dive right into the new updates. With GitLab 15.4 comes our first ever machine learning powered feature, improved CI/CD integration, various security and workflow features, and a lot more. But to talk through these new updates, I have the pleasure of having with me today Derek Ferguson, Senior Product Manager at GitLab, who's joined us to discuss some of GitLab's latest features and what's to come from GitLab. So let's dive right into that and kick it off with the big one. As I said, this release is the first from GitLab to offer a machine learning powered feature. And we know from GitLab's 2022 Global DevSecOps survey that AI and ML use is on the rise in software development, with 31%, nearly a third of teams saying they were using AI ML for code review, which is almost twice as many as said so last year in our survey. And so Derek, as one of the product thought leaders in this area, could you, tell us a little bit more about this new feature?
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to share more, Brendan. Thanks a lot for the invite. So yeah, with 15.4, GitLab can now recommend merge request reviewers with a feature that we're calling suggested reviewers, which is in open beta currently. So using the changes in a merge request and a project's contribution graph, machine learning powered suggestions will appear in the reviewer dropdown in the merge request sidebar. And this feature right now is in beta and behind a feature flag, and it's currently being rolled out to all ultimate GitLab.com customers. And just a little background, I guess, the suggested reviewers is the result of successful integration of the Unreview acquisition. So we acquired Unreview back in 2021, and it gave GitLab a practical way to get started with machine learning with a really focused value proposition that was pretty obvious to the platform, I think.
Yeah, it's really exciting to hear. I was really excited when we had announced that acquisition, and even more excited to see it come to fruition. And in fact, like a little inside baseball is we've been using this feature ourselves, right? The beauty of building GitLab with GitLab when you work at GitLab is that you get to use some of these features before they're out, because we use GitLab ourselves to build GitLab. And so this suggested reviewers feature is something that I've seen for a while. I'm really excited that now we're releasing it in this public beta. Derek, could you also tell us like how that came to be and like what's next for AI ML for GitLab?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for DevOps teams, I think that anybody that's worked within that realm can say that deciding that the right person to review a merge request isn't really always straightforward or obvious. I mean, merge requests within GitLab are the primary method of making changes to files in a project. So making merge review or the merge process, I guess, more simple and seamless, something that we're always iterating on and improving. So like I said, choosing a reviewer isn't always straightforward, but it's definitely not something that you can ignore or that you should do in haste. I mean, the wrong reviewer can cause delays or low quality reviews, back and forth, reassigning reviewers and all that, or you can even end up with no reviewers at all, which is definitely not a situation you want to be in. So by automatically recommending reviewers, we can remove some of those menial tasks that get in the way of developers' workflows. And we're super excited to continue expanding GitLab's automated and AI ML powered features in future releases. There's definitely a lot of demand in this realm. For software testing, for example, 37% of DevOps teams use AI ML, and 39% plan to introduce AI ML powered testing in the near future. So there's definitely an appetite for AI ML and these features that create seamless software development experiences. So we'll definitely keep delivering that with our One DevOps platform.
That's great. That's great, Derek. Thanks. And normally on the lab, I'm talking about kind of my favorite features, but maybe you could let us know, besides this, what are a few of your favorite features from the latest release?
Sure. Yeah. I can tell you about a few of mine. So one of them is that you can limit the maximum number of custom domains per projects. So you've been able for a while to use GitLab pages to define custom domains for your websites. But too many custom domains has historically resulted in slow response times for the page's API. And it's impacted the overall reliability of the service. So now you can limit the maximum number of custom domains per project at the instance level. So you can strike the right balance for your needs. The default is 0, which is unlimited. So you can change that to whatever you need. And then another one I think would be getting started with GitLab pages. So it's a whole lot easier now with 15.4. Instead of creating the configuration files by hand. You can build them interactively using the GitLab UI. So you just have to answer a few basic questions on how your app is built, and we'll build the GitLab CI YAML file to get you started. And this is really the first time we've been using our new pipeline wizard. So it's a tool that makes it easy to create GitLab CI YAML files by building them directly in the GitLab UI. So you can definitely look forward to more simplified onboarding helpers like this one in the near future. And then I guess the last one would be that we've improved the CI/CD integration in Visual Studio Code. So when you're building up complicated GitLab CI YAML configurations that might include something like include or extends keywords, it can be challenging to ensure that the configuration is valid and that the file has your expected configuration. So you can now use GitLab Workflow for VS Code and preview your GitLab CI/CD configuration file directly in VS Code. And you can even view your changes locally to ensure that your configuration is what you expect before you commit and push. And there's even some more GitLab workflow updates that provide more CI/CD pipeline interactions to help you avoid context switching and things like that. So I definitely recommend that listeners check those out.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that insight, Derek. And I think it's really interesting, those last two you shared. The GitLab CI YAML file is so powerful, right? But it could be intimidating for folks getting started. So I'm really excited. Again, more now I'm stuck on this baseball too. Inside baseball here is that the pipeline wizard came out of our incubation engineering department. And so I've been following that really closely as well, and really excited to see that come, so that you don't just, a lot of times we talk about in anything, any kind of, knowledge work, starting with a blank sheet of paper can be the hardest. And so just this little wizard to help you get started when you have a blank CI YAML and you're just trying to figure it out, I think that's a really powerful feature that I think is going to really help teams adopt, right, more of the One DevOps platform a lot easier over time. And then kind of on the other side of that, right, when you're a really advanced DevOps team, or you have a very complex CI/CD integration, anyone that's ever looked at GitLab the project can see there's a very complex CI setup there. Giving tools for those folks to be able to manage their CI/CD configuration even easier. It's kind of like both sides of the same coin there. So I'm really excited about all those as well. You hit it right on the nail on the head, and CI/CD is always really near and dear to my heart. So that's great. And thanks so much for joining us, Derek. I really appreciate it. We'll have you back anytime you'll have us. And there are a few more features from this month's release that I do want to hit on for our listeners, although I did really like Derek's. One is the ability to sort and filter tables that have data in them in Markdown. So working with I love Markdown, but working with tables in Markdown, like to call it cumbersome is maybe an understatement. It can be difficult to figure out, how many pipes you need and how many empty cells there are. But then that table output is also very static when it's, out in whatever document, if it's an issue or the wiki or somewhere else. But now you can easily insert data-driven tables using a JSON syntax that lets you, save issues, submit commits, or publish the page, and then you can sort or filter on those fields. And so it's really simple. You can just click and have it resort, 100 rows in a table, just as easy as any, web search, or the kind of way we're used to interacting with the web, but with Markdown. And so I think this is a really great feature. Again, bringing those kind of two sides of the same coin, simplicity of Markdown, but then the, complexity that you can have when you have more data together. You also can now have that users on a verified domain can bypass the email validation. So this is really helpful. Like if you get new users created through SAML or through some sort of other centralized provider that belong to a verified domain that you say, this domain is safe, they don't have to also get a GitLab verification email, which just reduces the friction, right? Accounts that are generated through some sort of provisioning process, like new users onboarding or bringing a new team into GitLab, those are already verified. So users shouldn't have to individually also verify them manually. So I'm really excited about that. You also can now add linked resources to incident issues. So incident issues, to remind you, are a specific kind of issue involved in the incident management features of GitLab. And with this release, you can more easily surface, the incident Slack channel, the Zoom meeting space, or links to a specific resource for resolving incidents. And that's really key, because being able to collaborate and being able to be efficient in the middle of an incident are really critical path items to take care of. And users don't want to spend time, setting up a new collaboration tool for each incident. And so this feature really helps handle those roadblocks and unblock users to actually focus on the incident at hand. And then last, but certainly not least, again, CI/CD and the GitLab runner fleet is always near and dear to my heart. And I'm really excited that there are now more powerful Linux machine types available for GitLab SaaS runners. So for those who run on GitLab.com or GitLab Software as a Service, you may see that you've got these shared runners that GitLab provides where you can run your jobs on. But those have kind of always been just a homogeneous set of machines. But we now have access to medium and large, more powerful machines, so that you have more choices about how you want to distribute your CI/CD jobs. And of course, you still have the great 100% job isolation. Everything's an ephemeral virtual machine. So the security and auto scaling is all automatically handled fully by GitLab, but you also get the benefit of more powerful machine types. So it's, again, a best of both worlds situation there. So that's a lot of the great features that were in the latest release, but of course we can never get through all of them in our short time together. So I encourage you to take a look at GitLab's 15.4 release blog for the full list of over 60 plus updates. And Derek, again, thanks again for joining. We can't wait to have you back on the show sometime. And thanks to all you viewers for watching today. Again, you can find me on the internet. I'm at O'Leary Crew, most places. And Twitter's where I spend most of my time. So if you have an idea for a future episode or want to discuss anything from today's episode in more detail, you can find me there. My DMs are wide open. Again, the lab is produced monthly. So thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you next month in the lab. Stay safe.
Previously on Engineering the Change.
It's kind of like being on a football team. You got to make cuts to the roster, right? But we got to take it down to 3 finalists. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
So,
She's in.
But there was, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this. I give extra bonus points to people who can write well and can express themselves, and Donald did express himself. All right, so let's go through this then. Stephanie Sanchez, Donald Brazil, and Carly Duvel are our 3 finalists for this cohort's Engineering the Change Scholarship.
Engineering the Change has literally changed the lives of scholarship winners. Here are our past recipients.
My name is Victoria Roas. I am an immigrant from Brazil. I came to this country when I was 10 years old.
My name is Drew Johnson. I'm a full stack software engineer.
My name is Alina Maluk. I'm from Ukraine. I'm the winner of scholarship from 2 cohorts before me.
The Engineering of Change scholarship that I won last year was life-changing.
I really poured my soul and told my story to them, and a few weeks later I got a call from Alan, and it was, I even cried on the phone, I think. And it was like a life-changing moment.
The program at Boca Code was amazing. It was easy for me with zero experience to learn the fundamentals of software development.
My career has completely changed from barely being able to, hold down a job to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Vocal Code has built me up.
I got a job at hot fintech software company at the day of graduation.
I think that becoming a software engineer has been one of the most rewarding things in my life.
I am Carly Duberval, mother of two amazing children. I have a bachelor degree in accounting.
My name is Donald Brazil. I was born in Haiti. I was raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Growing up, I've always been interested in technology.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm originally from Haiti. I've resided in Miami for wherever it feels. I currently have a degree in psychology, and I enjoy helping people.
I migrated recently to Florida because of insecurity and political issue.
I fell into software engineering as something I would love to pursue.
I feel like there is a void that that I still have. There's something tugging at me because I feel like I have not challenged myself to reach my full potential.
Here in US, my degree is not accepted. I need to work for my family duties.
Winning this scholarship is a great opportunity for me to finally, pursue that career in software engineering. And, I would love to, give back to those who were in my position where they were completely lost and didn't really have any guidance.
My goal is to be a vessel to other people, other underrepresented communities.
Without money and resources, I can't afford to go to Boca Raton.
And being a finalist is an amazing opportunity. I would never have thought I would have been even considered.
This field, I will be good at it. And I have an opportunity to make an impact on my community and the world.
If I won this scholarship, I will share my knowledge with other Black women, immigrants who share my faith.
I would love to, have the opportunity at the end of the day to showcase those who believe in me, and then, help others who also, would be in the same position that I am.
Because I know my contribution will make a lifelong impact on the world.
Thanks so much for joining us here for this interview today. And you know what? Making it to the finals for this is an accomplishment in and of itself. And I think it really talks about the kind of person you are. And, reading your essay, I was very, very impressed. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I will be that software engineer who will help immigrants to achieve their dreams.
5 years, I would love to see myself, slowly opening my organization, have it on the ground, running. I just want to see myself helping others, just like others help me. I just want to give back to those who gave to me.
I see myself hopefully excelling in the field of software engineering, and I don't know exactly what my niche will be. So I know that I'm going to be excelling. I don't know exactly what it'll look like right now, but you guys will be proud.
Why do you want to be a software engineer? What's gonna make you stick through this at the end of the day?
I love it. I can do it. I will do it. Why I will do it? Because I love it.
It's just a great field to get into. The technology portion of it is just something I've always been interested in. As a kid, I've always been interested in computers, phones, gadgets.
I always felt a need to, or a pull toward doing something for someone else. In the field of engineering, allows me to continue to do that, because whether it is in a medical field, the automotive field, just the world of entrepreneurship, there's just so many different ways that I can continue doing good and making an impact.
One of the things that's something that's very near and dear to my heart is, equity, parity, gender diversity, and just diversity and parity on all levels, equality. And I wonder how do you envision going about doing that?
Like I did with my old career, I lift women to accounting in my country. I motivate them, I assist them, and help them to achieve, like I said, to achieve their dream, to be excellent in this field.
I would love to open an organization that can, give back to those and help guide them with the, the opportunities that, I'd had from this experience.
What drives you to do software engineering and not, go back to something that you've already known and you've obviously been very successful at?
I would say now everything is technology. So why should I say in accounting? If the world is moving and everything now is tech. I have two brothers. One died in 2007. He was a senior software engineer. My youngest brother is a software engineer. Why not me? It's because I'm woman? No. I want it, I will do it.
At the moment right now, I work inventory for a home installation company. It's a pretty okay job, but it's not what I feel that I was meant to do.
The knowledge I have, I can pass on to other people. I know some of the challenges that our communities face. So with my knowledge and my mentorship, whether it's mentoring one person or just a group of people, exposing them to this field and to just other fields that exist where there's more to life than just what is in front of us. And I believe that I can be a bridge in that gap.
How do you feel like the scholarship is gonna do to you? Like, why is it important for you to win this?
I will share my knowledge with people, with women or immigrants, and use my knowledge to help them.
This scholarship is giving me that opportunity to show the world that, I can do great things.
So this scholarship would definitely assist me in changing the trajectory of my life and hopefully where I can continue this same legacy in helping other people. So.
Your essay was amazing. Your answers here today were amazing. You really do represent what engineering the change is all about. Thanks for coming in today, and we can't wait to announce our winners soon.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Marcus Thomas, who is the president of Court. They are a consulting firm that specializes in test automation. And we're going to talk about what's going on with test automation and DevOps, because perhaps things aren't going as well as we would all like. Marcus, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
How you doing? I'm doing fine. Yourself?
What fundamentally is the problem? We've been talking about automating tests for as long as I can remember, and yet most of the tests that people put together are still manual, and they're kind of somewhat semi-integrated with their CI/CD platforms with mixed results. So what's the fundamental issue, and what do we need to fix?
I think the fundamental issue is this. We talk a lot about shift left, right? Shift left it's been a new mantra that's been, that people speak about has been speaking about for at least the last 10, 15 years. And I think we've gotten to the point where we think we've mastered it, right? And because we think we've mastered it, I think we've gotten complacent with that word shift left. But we actually haven't really truly shifted shift left, right? We haven't done that proficiently enough. And what I mean by that is this. When you go into starting a test automation for a project, what happens? The last thing that happens is test automation. The last thing that the application is developed, right? In a sprint, let's say you're talking about the developers, creating the user story, adding acceptance criteria, with their Scrum team, and then it's handed to the testers to test it, and then it's handed to the automated tester to automate it. Right. So it's still very much a shift right concept, just in a shorter test cycle. So what happens now is that software development teams have gotten good at delivering software fast. Right. We've kind of, mastered that now. And the customers are now hungry. Right. They're now hungry for features that used to take years, and we're giving it to them. And if you're doing Scale Agile, we're giving it to them in 3 months. Right. But the automation has not kept pace. Right. We're still using the same methodologies. We're still talking about the same thing, Selenium. Right. We're still talking about page object model. We're now talking about Gherkin. Right. Gherkin is trying to accomplish that. When you write your acceptance criteria, you should be able to take that acceptance criteria and literally run the test script with it.
So if that's the case, are we talking about shifting further left towards developers and letting them write the tests in a more automated fashion, or what exactly is the solution?
Yeah, excellent question. So what I've been talking about, what I've been trying to introduce to this industry is shift down, right? We need to shift down. And what I mean by that is that the product owner should be as I wouldn't say responsible, but should have focused on test automation at the time that the features acceptance criteria is getting written. And the product owner doesn't have to be technical, and they don't have to be involved in actually building out the actual automated test, but they should actually take the accountability of saying, hey, here's the acceptance criteria. And how are we going to automate the test cases for this? And what I mean by that is this. There are 3 fundamental things that you need in order to automate a test, right? You need to have, from a technical standpoint, you need to be able to understand the objects that you're going to interact with in that application. You need to understand what the requirement is for that application. And then you need to have a framework that can actually build that out. So that discussion, it needs to happen from a product owner standpoint. The product owner needs to take the responsibility. So what we've been doing at my company is we have a shift down criteria that we add to every single user story. And what the product owner is doing is he's starting that discussion. Hey, Scrum team, developer, automator, what do you need to be able to automate this acceptance criteria here? So the test automated engineer is going to look at the developer and say, hey, did you think about adding a unique locator to this object? I see here from your screen markup or from the application, I'm going to use a login example because that's the simplest form. You have this username password field here. Do you have something that's going to uniquely identify this username text box? Hey, I noticed that you're using a drop down here, but it doesn't quite operate like a drop down. Is there a reason why we're doing that? Because that may interfere with how we're automating this test case. So that discussion is happening at the beginning of planning, right? You're talking about this, and it kind of shifts the whole focus, not just from what the user wants at the end, but how the user is going to get it, and how clean of a product you want to get, because we all know that if you want to get a product fast and you want to get it clean, you're going to need to be able to automate the test. So shift down is the thing that I think is going to help shift that mindset.
Do the product owners get that? Are they capable of thinking that through entirely, or do you have to kind of hold their hands to make that all work?
Yeah, good question. So I think they understand that automation is needed, right? For sure. They don't necessarily understand how it's going to be automated and what is included. So what we're asking our product owner to do is raise the question. The question that you want to raise is, how are we going to automate this acceptance criteria? How are you going to build the test cases? And then once that question is raised, now the test automation engineer is going to ask the developer in the same Scrum meeting, hey, are you adding unique locators? So that's what the product owner is doing, is just driving the conversation and making sure that the discussion is had in that sprint planning session. The more that happens, the pattern, the product owner will now have that pattern. He'll understand, hey, I noticed in this particular acceptance criteria here, we're talking about changing fields. Did you actually think about, those locators? So I think the product owner would learn to be able to understand that level of detail over time. But at the beginning of the process, it's not about the product owner being technical enough to answer those questions. It's just about them being able to ask the question and having the Scrum team answer it.
Who should be running the test these days? Because you hear a lot more about developers are running the tests, but some folks would wonder, is that equivalent of the foxes watching the chicken in the hen house? Because, the developers are going to go, yep, I passed that. That's great. And away we go. But no one's there to kind of verify. So can we trust developers to run the tests, or do we need to still have some sort of second party validation?
Oh, absolutely. You hit it right on the nail, man. And this has been my biggest mantra, right? I just did another speaking engagement, and my topic was this: automating tests should be as effortlessly as creating a manual test case, right? And what I mean by that is my highline was automate like a tester, right? Because right now, what we're seeing in the industry is going in two different directions, right? The first direction, one of the directions I should say, is going in the codeless direction, where we're training, we're coming out with these automation tools, and we're telling the tester, all you have to do is just click the record button and play it back, and the script will do all of this magic for you, and it will run. And the industry is starting to see, obviously, that is not completely true. The second direction we're going in with the event of, Cucumber and Selenium, is that we're going in the 100% code direction. Like you suggested, like some teams believe that they have to have developers hire another development team that does the testing, right? So you got two development teams, essentially. One is doing your testing and one is now doing your automation. And what's happening is we're going back to the pre-Y2K days where the developers were doing most of the testing, right? So I'm a big component and big fan of having the tester, whether they have development skills or not, but having the tester being in control of automating their tests and maintaining their tests, right? So we are building solutions around that concept, where there's a hybrid between the codeless UI, because I think there's a component of that is still very much needed, where you can quickly build automated tests without writing one single line of code. And then we have a framework, it's an open, fast starter framework that you can actually use and to add custom code for, say 25% of the functionality in most applications need some level of coding. This is why those completely codeless tools sometimes do not work, because they're trying to fit, functionality into that codeless tool that doesn't quite fit. So our approach is to use a hybrid where we have a codeless UI that's integrated with an actual open, fast framework that allows you to do that. And a tester, whether they have programming skills or not, can still be able to automate the test case, maintain it, and run it. And that's what we're pushing in the industry.
We hear a lot about AI in testing these days. How real is that, or how much of that is kind of wishful thinking and the machine's not quite ready to write those tests in any kind of way that scales or is meaningful?
It's AI. I'm still not sure which direction AI is going to take us in. If we're going in, because I guess, like I said, this industry is kind of split down the middle right now. But what I hope AI would be able to do, at least what I'm going to advocate and push for in the solutions that I build, the tester needs to be in control over how that AI is implemented. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, you have an object, in an application, because a lot of people don't understand that testers' mindset is what needs to remain in control of tester. It's not necessarily, it's all about test case design. No matter what solution you build, what product you use, the tester need to understand how to design test cases, those boundary conditions, right? The equivalent partitioning, right? The state transition, all of those things need to be considered when you're building manual test cases. So I don't think an AI can necessarily replace that, right? Because the tester is capable of thinking outside of the box. And AI is within the box, obviously, right? So now here's where I think AI can actually benefit. Let's say we have a text box, and in that requirement, we know that text box can handle 10 characters, and it only can handle an alpha string, right? Well, the tester should be able to say, hey, this is what I want the test script to do for this particular text box. And that's what should drive the AI, and not necessarily have the AI drive, the testing.
It seems like we still want to put testing at the back end of that development process, and then we run up against the deadline, and then we kind of skip a lot of the testing, and then we ship it into production, and then we're surprised when there's a million bugs to be fixed. So is the whole process somewhat broken, and do we need to really think through, what tests need to be run when exactly during the pre-production process and the development process? And we just never seem to have gotten our heads wrapped around what the exact flow should be.
Yeah, and this goes back to the shift down. That is another component of shift down. The other conversation that happens at the beginning of writing that acceptance criteria is, how are we going to link the tests that we need to automate and need to execute when you, developer, the minute you say git push and you push that code, what tests are going to be kicked off? And we're not going to wait until the tests hit the test environment, right? We're also not going to get into the code and help you unit test either, right? But we do want you to have access to these I call them functional unit tests, because they behave at a unit level, but they're still functional, right? And we want you to have access to these functional unit tests. So the minute that you push your code right in your local environment, there should be a suite of tests executed against that push. And now we're catching everything. Now we've truly shifted left, right? Because you're not waiting until you deploy it to the test environment and throwing it over the wall to the testers. You get that immediate feedback. And we talk a lot about shift left and trying to do that. But to your point, it doesn't happen because test automation and testing is still an afterthought, even within, the agile process.
And some of this just comes down to context, because if I wrote code a week ago and we're testing it now, I'm not going to remember what the issue of the day was. But if I get the test in near real time to when I actually pushed it, I'm going to remember what it was and what the issue was, and I can act on it faster in a more meaningful way, because otherwise I've moved on to some other project by the time you get a test result back to me.
Exactly. We have these. So one of the things we do is we have what we call our smart components. We tag and the feature, with the components, and that tells us a functional area of the application that is going to be impacted. And we pass those tags along through the pipeline. And that's how we make sure that, we're not relying on memory.
All too often, developers, to be frank, kind of look at testers as the enemy. So how do we turn them into allies and kind of think about this more as somebody who's going to, prevent you from having an issue later on?
It's funny. I teach training as well. And I try to, one of the things I teach my students is that, one thing that developers like is a well-written bug. They hate bugs, but if you're going to write it well, right? Give them all the information that they need, to be able to, reproduce that bug. I think what's going to get developers on on the tester side is helping them do the one thing they don't like to do, and that's tests. Unit testing. It is the biggest thing that they dread, right? Because it takes them away from the fun. It takes them away from actually developing, right? So if we can find a way to help the developers do their unit testing, I think that's going to be the bridge, that is going to help, ease a lot of those contention points.
All right, folks, you heard it here. A well-written test and a little empathy goes a long way. Hey, Marcus, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Ofer Smadari, who's the CEO for Torque, and they're a specialist in the land of security automation and have some innovative stuff in the no-code category, and they just raised $80 million in additional funding. Hey, Ofer, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We have been talking about security automation for years, and it seems like it's never quite got the level of acceptance or adoption that you would think that it would, based on all our issues of the day, including the shortage of people that we don't have in the space. From your perspective, what's been the challenge in terms of getting more security processes automated?
So it's very simple. Until a few years ago, building any security process would demand like heavily engineering effort, meaning that you will need engineers to stitch via code all of your like security products, okay, and then code just by hand all the automation processes, and that required like sometimes dozens of people just to work on an automation platform like the first generation of automation. And due to that, at least according to what I heard from Gartner, only 10% of the organization adopted an automation platform. Because like the resources that you would need just to deal with it cost so much, and you didn't have like enough engineers to build that. And the way we are doing it today, we build kind of like an abstraction layer that helps unskilled engineers or analysts to build automation just with like drag and drop motion, meaning no engineering.
So I don't have to be a programmer per se to automate things, whereas in the past, I used to have to find a security engineer who knew how to write code, and that was part of the challenge.
Of course.
All right. As we go along, how much do I need to know about the underlying processes to automate them? And I'm asking the question because the processes seem to be changing more frequently than ever. So how do I keep pace with the changes in the environment and still automate things?
So, our platform, it's not required any plugins or connectors. You can just connect to anything that has like API, okay? Meaning that you can change your playbooks or workflows every day, every hour, and build something that is suitable for your needs. We are providing something called template library, which means that like every template is like a new idea, okay, on a process that you can automate with us, with Torque, okay, and it can be in production in few hours, maybe less.
Does that include a set of templates? I mean, how much do I need to know? Are there some common practices that you guys have already automated and all I'm doing is reusing them within the context of a no-code platform, or how does it work?
So we have pre-built templates. We have like hundreds of them that are almost out of the box. You just need to do some kind of like configuration that is very easy, no coding, just some, let's say you need to coordinate your own integration, which takes like minutes to do, and you can be on production very fast.
What allowed you guys to do this per se? Because the challenge has been around forever. So what's the secret sauce that enabled you guys to build a no-code approach to security automation?
So it's mainly because almost everything has API today for like the past like three to 4 years. Almost every security platform is SaaS or cloud native. You can connect to any kind of vendor from CrowdStrike to Armis to Wiz to Microsoft to Okta on like a very, very easy manner. And again, times has changed since the last 5 years, and cloud adoption is rising very fast. So everything can be very easy to connect.
Who's using this tool? Do you think it's going to be the security operations team, or are we seeing more of the responsibility for automating the back-end processes shifting over to more of the mainstream IT operations folks, and this gives them a tool that allows them to find the whole thing more accessible?
So that's a good question. So first thing, we have today, like customers, we have more than 10, 15 different teams that are using the platform. We have the cloud security teams, the threat hunting teams, the SOC guys, the DevOps, the DevSecOps, and IT security. So we created like a single language that you can work on together. The platform has like a collaboration option, okay, which meaning that you can work on a single workflow, 10, 15 people, okay, simultaneously with different permissions. And you can build your teams with like a whole bunch of teams that usually don't work together.
We hear a lot about DevSecOps lately. Do you think that we're going to see more of a melding of security operations and DevOps and network operations? And this is kind of part of that larger trend that we're seeing. And how far of a shift left, for that matter, will we see?
So that depends on the organization. Usually when you're working with companies that are like born in the cloud, you see more of like DevSecOps guys. But, I guess as more as you will adopt more cloud applications and you will build cloud native applications in your cloud, even like traditional enterprises, we will see more DevSecOps roles. And I think today it's like a very centralized role today in almost like every company that are adopting tech rapidly.
Do you think that part of our problem is that we're so fragmented when it comes to security, and then each team is doing its own little thing, that we don't have a cohesive approach and the bad guys are exploiting that?
Sure. I guess every organization adopting a different security framework. Some of them can use CISO mind map, other ones can use like NIST or other sort of security framework, and they're trying to adopt detections tools for any posture that they see. And again, that depends on their budget and everything, but I believe it's like an endless motion. You will always need to cover your infrastructures or applications or endpoints with new detection platform with new capabilities, and then you will need to automate processes, because you cannot chase alerts all day.
We hear a lot about AI in the context of automation. Is that for real, or is that just wishful thinking, or what's the state of the industry right now?
So today it's like wishful thinking. I believe that as long as we'll have like more data, we can, establish AI processes in our platform. We're about to do that, but we'll need like more data to do that.
What's the challenge in getting more data? Is it just pulling it from those APIs? I mean, is it accessible and it's just now a question of effort, or is there another challenge?
So both. It's a matter of like focus. You have like as a startup, you have your own targets. You need to achieve them, and alongside that, you need to build your technology. So I guess there are like different steps on how you're building your tech stack. Okay, and when you are mature enough to adopt like very high-end technologies, it's like a big investment. Obviously, you can use like third-party engines that can help you. We are doing that today, but we will have some of let's call it AI in our platform in the next year.
All right. So what's next for you guys? What's the plan for the funding? What are you guys thinking about in terms of the next challenges for the company?
So we are well funded. We are super well capitalized. We have great investors. We are growing rapidly in the US. We just started selling. It's our third quarter of selling. We exceeded 40 customers. Part of them Fortune 50 into small, medium enterprises from any industry, from the security industry, from the e-commerce, from financing, fintech, almost it's cross industry, cross size, cross regions. We see mass adoption. Just to give you an example, in 6 months, we have customers that build more than 200 automations in production for a single customer without any engineering.
All right, folks, you heard it here. The long-held promise of automation is coming this way thanks to a no-code platform. And hopefully that will mitigate some of this chronic shortage of folks that we're seeing out there. Alfred, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
Hello, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had a fantastic slate of interviews with some of the best and brightest to keep you up to date with the latest news. And alongside the airing of Techstrong Woman in the Blab with Brendan O'Leary, we had plenty of great content today. We'll be back again on Monday, so we hope to see you then. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.